Some of you might wonder why, and this might feel really laborious going over this stuff and dragging. You're going, God, we just spent an hour on 2 pages. How long is this going to take? It's going to take a long time. But the reason is because these are really critical ideas. The reason I took a little time to take you through the steps with a little bit more depth is to give you a flavor of what these things are really asking you to do. These are dynamic exercises. They're not intellectual checklist things. And they're going to move you. And while you're getting moved, you're going to get scared. It's scary. Change is scary. So, being convinced of these first 2 steps, I'm powerless over alcohol, I can't manage my life, I'm willing to believe in a power greater than me, and I'm willing to believe that power might have something positive in mind for me. Being convinced of those ideas, we're at step 3. But nowhere in here did it say, now you've done step 1, now you've done step 2. Because you see, those are conclusions that you come to in your thinking. If you've come to these conclusions, now you're at step 3. Wonderful. Which is, we decide to turn our will and our life, that's our thinking and our actions, over to God as we understood Him, or over to God as we don't understand Him. I turn mine over to the mystery. That's as close as I could come. I'll just turn my thinking and my actions over to the mystery. So, just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? Nice question. And it's probably in everyone's head, except the guys that have been through multiple treatments. It's kind of like reading ahead. But the point, if you're new to this idea, they're going to tell me exactly what they mean by turning your will and your life over. So they're going to give us some examples. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. So, embedded in that idea, they're asking me, have I concluded that self-will has been my problem? Self-reliance. This is not a drinking question, is it? What do I source to get through the day? My thinking. Self-will. My will as applied to my life can hardly be a success. That's what they want me to conclude. On that basis, we're almost always in collision with something or somebody. Even though our motives are good, most people try to live by self-propulsion. And some people seem to get away with it. But for us, it's gasoline on the fire. For us, it's toxic as hell. So am I one of those guys? Because here's the tell, when you're operating on self-will, you're almost always creating stress between an idea and a person. There are circumstances, a situation. You can tell from the stress that you're applying your will to something that doesn't want to give. So does that mean, am I almost always in collision with something or somebody? I never looked at it that way, but I fought everything. From about age 6 on, I argued with everything and everybody. I was just genetically pissed off. I don't know why, just the way I was. And each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show. Here's the analogy. He's forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. Honey, if you just do it this way, we'd be fine. If everyone would just behave. If my boss was this way, then if I had a better job, then this would be. If I had the new car, then, that's what they're talking about. If I could just arrange all of this out here to my liking, then I'd be okay. Well, we saw that in Bill's story. That's external referral. That's the idea that if I get the picture right, I'm going to be okay. Then every once in a while you get the picture right, you instinctively know you're not okay, and you think there's something wrong with the picture. You never think there's something wrong with the way you're approaching life. So, if his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Listen, it's not just about me getting my way. You'll have a better deal too. I promise, because I'll be a lot nicer. I'll be a lot more generous. It'll be a good thing for all of us, really. If I could just be emperor. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. Trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. May be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, he's more likely to have varied traits. In other words, I will do and be whatever I need to do and be to get my way. If it's kindness, if it's flattery, I'll just sugarcoat you. And if it needs a hammer, I'll get the biggest hammer you've ever seen. And you will never want to come back here to that situation again. Whatever it takes. What usually happens? Oh, the show doesn't come off very well. He begins to think life doesn't treat him right. He decides to exert himself more. Do you see? You don't follow my script. I don't ever consider, maybe there's something wrong with me deciding how everyone's supposed to think, feel, and act. I start feeling sorry myself. I start thinking, life's not fair. Life is really not fair. So my solution to that is more willpower. I exert myself the more. Selfish self-centeredness, self-will is what's driving my life into the ground. And I don't see it, so I go right to the propellant that's killing me, and I say, we need more of that. We need to apply more problem to this problem. That's what we need to do. God. He becomes on the next occasion still more demanding or gracious as the case may be. Still the play does not suit him. Excuse me. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, he is sure other people are more to blame. Isn't that always the case? I might be bad, but you're worse. I might have lied, but you told a bigger lie. I might be a jerk, but you're a bigger jerk. I might be a manipulator, but certainly not in a class of you. Blame, blame, blame. He becomes angry, indignant. Still the play doesn't suit him. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, he is sure other people are more to blame. He becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. Nice emotional combination. Anger, which is fear, indignation, my ego is offended, self-pity. Poor me. God. Oh, how can anyone expect a guy to stay sober through this? You know, what's his basic trouble? Good question. Is he not really a self-seeker? Even when trying to be kind. Now turn that question on yourself. Even when I'm being nice, isn't it all about me? That's tough. If you fancy yourself a generous, open-minded guy, that's tough. Is he not the victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? That's the external referral again. If I just take care of things properly, I'll get what I want. And if I get what I want, I'll be okay. And the truth is, I never wanted the money, and I never wanted the prestige, I never wanted the power. The truth is, I wanted to be at peace with myself. And I had no way of knowing that. So my ego just said, you know what? We've created an appetite for you over here. She's right over there in the corner. I want you to dedicate the next 2 years of your life to getting her to be with you. Oh, okay. You know, and off I go on my little mission. Because I've decided, my mind's convinced me, I can't live without her. Then I get her, and what does my mind say? I had no idea she was really going to be like this. And your mind says, well, what about her over there? And you go, well, I got this problem over here with her here. No, don't worry about that problem. Just, you know, and off we go. The ego's business is to create an appetite in me. And then it tells me we got to go satisfy it. So I'm off on this self-willed, self-centered journey of fixing me with what broke me. You can't fix the problem with the thing that broke it. My mind is what's created my problems. So is that me? It is not evident to all, is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things he wants? And do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Is he not even in his best moments a producer of confusion rather than harmony? There's another good question. Even when you're being the best you can be, what's the outcome? This is confusion rather than harmony. Dissonance, friction, stress. That's what made my life run. I was always in crisis mode. And when there wasn't a crisis, I would create one. I always was in crisis because that made me feel alive. It made me feel like I was doing something. Really, all I was doing was running in big circles, little circles. Our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. He's like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century. Politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia If the rest of the world would only behave. The outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him, and the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever our protestations, whatever your complaints, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity. Ugly. Ask yourself where you're at with that. Isn't it really all about me? We're going to find when we look at the resentment's just I have a perception that I'm always being hurt or threatened. In that state, you're always in the defensive. Isn't it all about me? So they're bringing it all together. They're bringing the idea together. Conclusion in this paragraph. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Do you see what a radical approach this is? When you arrive here thinking you got a drinking problem, or you got a drinking and another problem, you think the force that you rode in on is the problem. It's not. It's just the vehicle that got you to me. They're saying, man, selfishness, self-centeredness, that's where all this comes from. That's where all your problems come from. Wow. Driven, here's the fuel, by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. We offend people. We have to, because we're on a mission to save ourselves, to improve ourselves. And if someone gets hurt along the way, that's just kind of the way it works. It's dog eat dog. You know what I'm saying? Whatever the rationale is. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but invariably. We invariably find that at some time in the past, we've made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. So, when you grab a grievance that you have towards someone, you have to take it back to the point where was the decision you made, based in your selfishness, that put you in this position. I've heard people complain about getting robbed. Sons of bitches robbed me. Really? Where were you? I was downtown. What were you doing downtown? I was trying to make a connection. I was trying to buy some dope. Oh, really? You're mad at the thief that robbed you. You're the one that made the decision to put you down there. That couldn't have happened if you didn't go downtown. Well, I had to get high. Oh, well. That's what they mean by selfish, self-centered, and deluded. I want it to be your fault. Whatever it is, it's someone else's fault. Because if it's not, it means I'm responsible. And if I'm responsible, I'm in big trouble. Because I don't want to be responsible. I want to blame you for my circumstances. I want to blame them or it for my circumstances. Because if I'm responsible, then it's on me. And that can't be, because I can't handle that responsibility. Don't want to grow up. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. That's AA's conclusion. What's yours? That wasn't my conclusion for a long time. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcohol is an extreme example of self-will run riot. Self-centered thinking. Out of control. Though he usually doesn't think so. Of course not. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. They mean that literally. Above everything else, I got to get rid of this selfishness. The selfishness, my approach, my selfish, self-centered approach has the power to kill me. I'm killing me. I need a new approach. The power makes that possible. Not your sponsor, not your meeting, not the big book, not the steps, not your meetings, not your recovery environment. All those things are pieces, are tools that are in evidence, in place for you to be supported while you seek a relationship with the power. But the power is what changes me. My sponsor doesn't change me. Conversations don't change me. They might stimulate me. They might bring some other things to mind. They might be useful. And they can be just as unuseful, too, depending on what I do with the information. So there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. You see the theme? Selfishness, self-centeredness, that's the root of your problem. The fuel for that is fear. The solution to that is you got to hook up to this power. You don't have to know what it is. You don't have to be able to describe it, but you have to be willing to move towards it, even if it's a total mystery. Because I got to be convinced that anything I'm going towards is going to be better than where I am. Because I just can't do it. I cannot do this thing called life. I can't do it. I couldn't do it drunk, let alone sober. Just couldn't do it. I couldn't be a dad. I couldn't be a husband. I couldn't be a friend. Couldn't be an employer. I couldn't show up. I could not show up for my life. So, this is the how and why of it. Thank you. First of all, you've got to quit playing God. There's a concept for an atheist to grasp. I've got to quit playing God. When I'm walking around in my head with a script for every one of you of how you're supposed to think and react to me and the situations I set up, that's playing God. When I think I know how you're supposed to be and act, that's me playing God. If you know that, why don't you take some of my money and invest in the stock market? And we'll both get really filthy rich. You don't know nothing. I don't know. I can't read people's minds, and I can't tell the future. And I sure as hell don't know what's best for you, because I don't have a clue what's best for me. That's what they're trying to get me to. So quit playing God. Why? Because it doesn't work. Nice. I'll give you that. Okay, next. We decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He's the principal. We are his agents. He is the father. We are his children. We've got a hierarchy we're setting up. A new authority is what it's trying to say. You have a new reference point. A new internal reference point. This power, this mystery, these steps, this God idea, whatever it is, new boss. New place to run all your great ideas by instead of you. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we passed to freedom. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer, being all-powerful. He provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. I think that's my contract with God. God will provide me what I need. I will be sustained. That's not what I want necessarily, but what I need if I stay close to the power and perform his work well. And we know what the work is. It's helping each other and practice these aspects of God, these principles in all our affairs, in our daily living. That's the deal. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more we became interested in seeing what we can contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence. We talk a lot in our meditation practice, practicing the presence of God. The presence is a feeling. Practice the feeling of God. Practice, what is a feeling? Emotion. What is the emotion of God? Practice feeling God. We began to lose our fear. It doesn't say our fear went away. It said we began. We started. We're on a process. We commenced to lose our fear of today, right now, tomorrow, and whatever else is there. Big statement. We were reborn. Anyone ever been around a newborn baby? Clean slate. When my son was born, I watched him. There was not a shred of fear, of prejudice, of resentment, of anything. It's just feed me and change me. Thank you. I love you. You know, everything is great. I've got a dry diaper. God, couldn't be better than this, you know. It was beautiful. But as you watch your child grow, you see them go through the developmental stages. They become aware. They become aware of themselves. They discover their fingers and they're blown away. You know, they look like they're on an acid trip. They spend all day staring at their fingers, and then they discover they got toes, and it's far out. But then later on, they discover that they're separate. There's your crib, my bed, and in that separation, they start to get socialized. And you can see all the magic in them start to get not beat out, but certainly suppressed. And as you watch them go through school, you can see it happen. They're conforming. They're trying to be what their peer group has established for them to be. And it's just like it just goes away. It just gets buried. But this reborn idea is new slate. All new. You've got an opportunity at this point. You've got a break point. You can build a brand new life with none of the old crap in attendant. None of it. If you do this thing with abandon, if you really throw yourself into it, new deal. Not new life with the old crap, reborn, new life, new deal, completely new deal. We're now at step 3. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about what we've been talking about this morning? About the first 2 steps or about what this third step is about? Because to me, this is not a 5-10 minute deal. When I'm doing this with a guy and we're going through this process, he's going to go away now and he's going to think about it. I want you to consider it. I want you to understand what we're being asked to do, and I want you to consider it. Take a couple, 3 days, and we'll talk again, and we'll see if you wanted to go through with this. It's a decision. A decision that is not married to action is a fantasy. Have you ever been in a meeting listening to someone go, I'm working on the 3rd step? There's no work to the 3rd step. It's a decision based on the conclusions of the first 2 steps. There's no work. Either you've concluded to do it or you've concluded not to do it. If you're thinking about it, you've concluded not to do it. So, no questions? Now at step 3, many of us said to our Maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help, of thy power, thy love, thy way of life. May I do thy will always. I wish they would have put this sentence first. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, and that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. There's the ideal. Abandon, without reservation, completely to this process, to God, to the steps, whatever. We found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person, such as a wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor. Commonly, these days, you would take it with your sponsor. But it's better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. The wording was, of course, quite optional so long as we expressed the idea of voicing it without reservation. What is the idea? That I'm turning my thinking and my actions over the care and guidance of something greater than me. I surrender the steering wheel. So, again, the ideal is without reservation. This was only a beginning, though, if honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once. But it's not sustainable. You can have an effect. You can have an experience doing this step. But it's not sustainable. Because it's not the completion of the process. So what does it say? Next. So how long do you wait between your 3rd and your 4th step? I'd say a nanosecond. Next. Look at the verbiage. We launched out on a course of vigorous action. How many of us launched vigorously into this process? Probably no one. Maybe a couple people in the room had that experience. Did anyone have that experience? You did? Okay, good. One guy out of 40. See what I'm saying? But they encourage me to throw myself into this. Vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us have never attempted. No kidding. Why would I attempt to clean my house when you were the problem? Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once, when? At once, followed by a strenuous effort, not a half-assed, wimpy effort, a strenuous effort. Launch, vigorous action, permanent effect, strenuous effort to what? To face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. to face and be rid of the things that are my problem. They're not out here. They're my thinking. They're my attitudes. They're my ideas and my beliefs. That's what's the problem. So that's what's been blocking me from what? From having a relationship with the power, yes, but for having the kind of life that I wanted to have. From being the kind of person I wanted to be. From being the kind of dad I wanted to be. The son I wanted to be. Just, God, to be able to show up at all. So here you go. Our liquor was but a symptom. Ouch. That was my cross. I had a cross made out of whiskey bottles, you know. That was the problem. Oh, poor guy. He's a drunk. He's an alcoholic. Oh, nah. Just a symbol of the problem. The truth is, alcohol kept me alive long enough to get here. Alcohol was not the problem. Alcohol was probably the life preserver God sent me, because it kept me from blowing out my brains. It kept me from totally giving up. It kept me alive long enough to almost be physically dead, but to get to here, to get to a state where I was teachable a little bit, just a little bit. So if liquor is a symptom, we got to get down to causes and conditions, none of which are external. Therefore, we started on a personal inventory. This was step 4. How many of you guys are in a 4th step right now? How many of you guys have done a 4th step? Okay. If you're new in the last week or so, you're still shaking it out, don't worry about doing these steps as we're talking through and going through this book. There's going to be another guy behind me after next week that's going to start this process all over. So you want to get exposed to the ideas because you don't have the foundation. The reason we just spent 60 pages on the first 2 steps is because that's the foundation that you're building your recovery on. It's critical that I know what the hell this is about, because I'm going to base all my actions off those conclusions and the decision in the 3rd step. And if I'm saying, yeah, powerless, but in the back of my mind I'm thinking, no way, certainly not powerless over credit cards, certainly not powerless over the casino, you know. A lot of cultures, guys have more than one woman, you know, on and on. So, causes and conditions. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. Now they give us the business metaphor. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. A guy who has no way of introspection usually ends up bankrupt, emotionally, spiritually. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding, fact-facing process. It's an effort to discover the truth about the stock and trade. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. So, what are they saying? First instruction is, look it, become a neutral observer. It's just a fact-finding, fact-facing process. That's all. We just want to get in front of the truth, the facts. You don't have to be emotional about it. You can detach from that if you want. To discover the truth in stock and trade about what I'm selling myself. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods. Get rid of them promptly without regret. Damaged or unsaleable goods. Old ideas that don't work. Ideas that hurt me or are destructive. Get rid of them without regret. It's like if you owned a store and you had a bunch of broken hammers and you're going, we need the shelf space. We got a bunch of broken hammers here. And your inventory guy saying, we got to dump this stuff so we can make room for the Twinkies. And you're going, I don't know, I really like those hammers. They have a sentimental value. You're never going to sell them. They're just going to bog you down. They're going to cost you. Now, you transpose that into your recovery. You go, well, you know, I realize resentment is a problem, but I think some of these resentments are justified by God. And I think I'll just keep a couple of these because I really was screwed in this deal. And I reserve the right to be pissed off. Oh, that's nice. That's an unusable idea. That's a damaged goods. I got to be willing to drop that, get rid of it without regret. Quit fooling myself about the value of it. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. New idea. crystallized for me again. Flaws in my makeup have caused my failure. Flaws in my makeup. What makeup? My emotional makeup, my mental makeup, my ideas. Flaws in my thinking, flaws in my perception have caused my problem. They've caused my failure. They've caused my inability to live a life successfully. Being convinced itself, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us. We considered its common manifestations. There's a question embedded in this. Am I convinced that I'm the problem yet? If the answer is no, this is going to be a painful and slow process. If the answer is pretty much, it'll be a little faster. But it's going to have to go all the way over to, you know what, I am the problem. I am the problem. Because here's the deal. If I got to wait for all of you guys to tell me I'm okay, I'm screwed. I am screwed. But if I can have a way of knowing that I'm okay, regardless of your review of me, I'm free. I am free. You know, it's so these common manifestations of self was what had defeated me. Common manifestations. We're going to look at resentment, fear, and hurtful conduct towards others, sex conduct, because that'll kind of cover the umbrella. So here we go. Resentment. Does anyone have any questions about what they're saying so far?
I do.
What?
What do you do with the resentment that when you're looking through it, you can't really find where you played a role in?
Oh, we'll get to that. Yeah. Anyone else? The question was, what do you do when you can't find your part in it? We'll find your part. Anyone else? Okay. They start with resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From its stem, all forms of spiritual disease. For we've been not only mentally and physically ill, check, we've been spiritually sick. That's a new idea, if you're like me. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. So, there's a bunch of information here. Resentment's the number one offender. It says it can destroy me. What is resentment? It's an emotion. Resentment doesn't exist out here. Resentment exists in here, based on my perception of you. What is a resentment? It means to re-feel the harm. My perception is you've done something offensive to me. You've hurt me. Or you're getting ready to hurt me. And I responded. Now, this is called emotional intoxication, by the way. Just emotional drunkenness. But they're saying this emotion has the power to kill me, so I better pay attention to it. Emotion has the power to kill me. They're not talking about whiskey now, are they? They're not talking about cocaine or heroin. They're saying what you're thinking and the emotions produced by what you're thinking has the power to destroy you. They don't mean figuratively. They mean literally. So here's my question. I'm an atheist. I did the first step, but I don't believe in God. This says, when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. My experience was, you know what, I quit drinking, and I straightened out physically first. My body started to heal. And after I quit beating on it, it repaired itself on its own. I didn't have to instruct my body to heal itself. It just did. And slowly, over a period of a long time, mentally, my thinking straightened out. But I would say to you, I couldn't have straightened the spirit. I couldn't address the spiritual malady first because I was an atheist. The act of surrender is a spiritual act. When I gave up, when I said I'm toast, I'm beaten, I surrender, I give up, I'm powerless over alcohol, I can't run my life, I got no argument with that. Well, it begs the question, what did you surrender to? The truth, with a capital T, which becomes an aspect of honesty, which becomes an aspect of God. So you see, I did have a spiritual malady that was addressed, but I didn't recognize it. It's in the surrender. So when that's overcome, which it was in my surrender, then I begin to straighten out mentally and physically. So now I'm okay with the text. My experience matches that. In dealing with resentments, here's your instruction. Set them on paper. This is not complicated. Are you guys using sheets, columns and stuff? Do they have you? Okay, fine. Do that if you want. That's fine. But I'm just going to tell you what the book says to do. It's very simple. And it's not hard. Set them on paper. There's the first instruction. So go get some damn paper. Okay, got the paper. Now, list people, institutions, or principles with whom you're angry. This is not hard. We all know who we're pissed at. In fact, this is kind of fun. First column. This is who I'm pissed at. And you start writing, and it starts flowing, and it feels good, and then it feels not so good. But it's easy to make this list. Let me tell you about resentment. I've been talking a lot to you about thinking and about what keeps those things alive is our attention. Resentment means to re-feel the hurt. Okay? So you've done something that's offended me, it's pissed me off, and I replay it. Here's a great metaphor. Everyone in here has watched pro football on TV. The guy's doing a crossing pattern, fully extended, leaps in the air, gets hit, does a double flip, lands on his head, and everyone goes, wow, what a catch, what a throw, what a play. What do they say? Let's look at that again. And they look at it again. They say, let's slow it down and look at it. And they slow it down, and the guy's going up, and the spit's flying, and they go, oh, my God, how could he survive that? Hey, look at the angle of his head and the neck. Let's run that again. Reverse mode. You know, and we've spent 10 minutes watching this guy get hit. Every time we watch him get hit, the hit gets more profound. Doesn't it? Every time we replay it, it's like more amazing, more painful, more astounding. It's exactly what we're doing with these perceptions of being hurt or threatened. I'm replaying them. Your head really loves to do this. You know, we're doing pretty good. I haven't wanted to kill anyone in at least a week. We're doing pretty good. And then it goes, hey, what about this? And it brings out the little home movies. And it starts playing you some of your resentments. You go, oh, yeah, got to deal with that. And then you start thinking about it, and it gets bigger and bigger and louder, and pretty soon you're overwhelmed. You got to go shoot some pool, read a book, watch a movie, whatever you're going to do to get out of it. That's what they're talking about with this resentment. So set them on paper. People, institutions, government, school, church, medicine, whatever. Set them on paper. Get that done. Then it says, ask yourself why you're angry. That's the second column. So exhaust the first column. Right till you feel confident that you've got a good chunk of people, places, and things that you're pissed about. Then you ask the next question. You look at each one of those and say, why am I angry? Write down the answer. You don't have to write war and peace, but write down enough so, so it's got some substance. Why am I angry? In most cases, they're going to give me a hint here, it was found that our self-esteem, how I esteem myself, the picture of myself, pocketbooks, my money, my ambitions, or personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore. We were burned up. So what they're saying is all resentment is based in the idea that I'm either hurt or being threatened to be hurt. Okay? They'll all fall under one of those two categories. You hurt me, or I thought you were going to hurt me. So I had to prepare a defense. That's why we look so weird. Someone steps on our foot by accident, and all of a sudden they're in the hospital. Adverse, what? Can't hear you. Yeah. What do we do with the resentment against a dead person? Good question. We're going to talk about that in the men's. Okay? So, my perception is that life is coming at me in a hurtful, threatening way, and it makes me mad. I'm burned up. On our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. So this is the third column. How did it affect me? Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations which have been interfered with? You see, remember going back to the analogy of the actor, getting ready to do the third step? I've handed everyone a script. People aren't acting the way they want them to act, and I'm mad. I'm resentful. And it's an emotional intoxicant. Sometimes it feels really good to be angry. Just coincidentally, you never look at yourself, which is the only way out, is to look at me. So, now they're going to give some examples. We're usually as definite as this example. I'm resentful at Mr. Brown. Why? The cause. His attention to my wife. Told my wife I'm my mistress. Brown may get my job at the office. How does that affect me? Well, it affects my sex relations. My self-esteem, fear is bracketed. Sex relations, self-esteem, fear is bracketed. Security, self-esteem, fear is bracketed. It's that simple. Mrs. Jones, she's a nut. She snubbed me. Affects my personal relationship, self-esteem, and fear is bracketed. She committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend. She's a gossip. If he's a drunk and he needs to be committed, maybe I do. And even if I don't, she's going to tell everyone about it. You know, I'm afraid. My employer, unreasonable, unjust, overbearing, threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account. Now there's a narrow-minded guy. I'm stealing from you and I'm drunk on the job and you want to fire me? What kind of a guy are you? You know? Yeah, and it affects my self-esteem, security, and fear is bracketed. We're going to see fear runs through everything. We're going to find out that our anger is noisy fear. I'm angry, but what I'm angry about is I'm afraid. Yeah. So my wife misunderstands and nags. She likes my boss. Wants the house put in her name. This is a bad sign. And honey, is your insurance up to date? We're planning an accident for you. How am I affected? My pride, that's my ego. My personal or sex relations, my security. Fear is bracketed. So, I need to understand what's being threatened are the basic components of me. You know, I have ambitions. I have ambitions about how I want to show up socially. I have ambitions how I want to show up in relationships and sexually, monetarily. I have emotions. I want to be supported. I want to be loved. These are all natural inclinations. But for us, the alcoholism, the thinking, the diseased perception warps those things completely out of proportion. And those things end up driving my behavior. I'm not making choices. I'm just reacting. Well, my perceived needs are what are driving my choices, and my ego's cracking the whip. And it's saying, need more sex, need different sex, need a lot of sex, need sex in other towns. You need sex, 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 sex. Saying, you need to be respected. I don't need to be respected, damn it. I want to be revered. You know, I don't have an anger problem. I have a rage problem. We're just extreme as hell with everything. And our egos are creating those appetites that we're trying to satisfy, and they can never be satisfied. So, these are the examples. This is about as much specificity as you need. We went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. Now, they're going to bring me to the conclusion they want me to have. Excuse me. What's the conclusion? The first thing apparent was that this world and its people were often quite wrong. There you go. I like that conclusion because I was right. A lot of times people do crappy things. That's right. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us, of course, and we stayed sore. So I get no progress. I'm just in an endless cycle, big circle. You don't act according to my expectations, I get pissed off, you get pissed off. You don't act some more to my expectations, I get pissed off, you get pissed off. Yep. Sometimes it was remorse, then we're sore at ourselves. This is the door for self-pity. But the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. That's the conclusion they want you to come to. This is the self-willed life that failed utterly. So the question is, the more you have fought and tried to have things the way you desired them, did your life get better or worse? They want you to get in front of the answer to that question. For me, the answer was obvious. It just got worse and worse and worse and worse. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. Conclusion again, in case you didn't get it the first time. It is plain, now they're making a statement. It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. That's what they want me to conclude out looking at these three columns. All these people I've been trying to run and manage have really been running and managing me. Because I got to stay in the past to keep that resentment alive. I got to stay in the future to make my plan about how I'm going to deal with you. So I'm never here. I am never present for my life. Futile and unhappy. That would be a check for me. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? But with the alcoholic, whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. We found that it's fatal. They're telling us again, this emotional state has the power to kill me. They're also saying, in the sentence above it, my hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience. It doesn't say, my hope is never drinking again. They're already assuming if I have this experience, the drink thing won't even be on the table. It won't be on the menu. So you don't worry about fighting it. It'll be gone. There'll be nothing to fight with. The same is true of anything that brings you into a 12-step program. So they find this emotion fatal. This is why, for when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. When I'm resentful, first off, I'm in the past. Second off, there's no God there. I cut myself off from the power. Here you go. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again. It does not say we drink and then we go nuts. The insanity of alcohol returns. Remember Jim? Remember Fred? The idea crossed my mind. The drink wouldn't be so bad right now. Maybe if I put a little scotch in my milk, that wouldn't hurt me. You know, it was the end of a perfect day. I just thought I'd have a couple cocktails with dinner. 2 weeks later, I wake up in the hospital. Hello. It's a hell of a drink. Right? The insanity of the idea of the first drink returns, and then I drink. Once you drink it, you're drinking. It's the insane idea that presents that I don't have any defense against. I didn't recognize it as a sane idea. Seems like a good idea. And with us, to drink is to die. Big problem. If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison. We all know what a grouch is. The brainstorm is considered a positive thing in this culture. We're having a brainstorming session. What is that? Compilation of ideas, and out of those compilation of ideas comes a new idea, a bigger idea, a better idea. Not a bad thing. But back in those days, brainstorm was an agitated mental state. It was like a brain volcano, you know. So, poison, emotional extremes, emotions that intoxicate me are poison. We turned back to the list, for it held the key to the future. We were prepared to look for it from an entirely different angle. They're asking a question here. It's in a statement form, but have I begun to see that the world and its people have really dominated me? That's a tough thing to get in front of when you think you're a badass. When you're steeped in self-reliance, the American way, will yourself to success, you know, that's a tough one. The truth is, that's the truth. People have really dominated me. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancy to real, had the power to actually kill. How could we escape? Now, this is an interesting point, and it takes away a lot of argument. I got a relationship. Is it real or not? Doesn't matter. This says fancy to real. Remember the thing I told you about the brain? The brain doesn't know the difference between an idea that's imagined or that's happened. What they're saying is whether you've imagined this thing and you're in error, or whether you've really been offended and it really happened, is irrelevant. You've got a resentment. That's what's relevant. Whether it's real or not is not. It doesn't matter because it's real to you. Why? Because you believe it's true. And anything I believe is true is my reality. Period. So how could we escape? We saw these resentments must be mastered, but how? We couldn't wish them away any more than alcohol. Exactly. If you've wrestled with resentments, you know you're powerless. Now I'm powerless over damn emotion. What do I get to run? You know, what do I get to be the boss of? You know, I desperately need something to run here. I want to be in charge. I'm the top dog. What is this? All I get to do is choose my approach. That's the last choice I make. I choose how I approach every situation, problem, real or imagined. My approach. That's my choice. If I choose to approach and use the steps and this process The idea of God as a filter, I'll get one set of consequences. If I choose to continue to approach as I have in the past with self-reliance, self-centeredness, I will continue to get those consequences. It's the way it works. It's the law of those principles. So, this was our course. Thank you. This is what we did. This is how we got from being resentful, like you, to not being resentful. This was our course. Now, if we use the nautical analogy, the course is I'm in New York and I'm plot a course, blah, 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 and I'll sail in that direction for 2.5 weeks and I'll be in England. If I follow the course, right? But now, if when I set my compass, I'm a few degrees off, that'll only be inches in the beginning. It'll be miles at the end, which is why it's so important to have the foundation laid, first 3 steps, because that's what you're setting your compass to. And if you have doubts, if you have reservations, if you have things you're holding out, you're going to be off course. So this was our course. New idea. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. By the way, this is an internal conversation. When you upset me, I'm going to look at you and go, damn, I think you're spiritually sick. That's not what they're saying. They're saying, new way for me to look at you. Perhaps, maybe, maybe not, they're spiritually sick. Though we did not like their symptoms, that's what we wrote down in column 2. And the way they disturbed us, that was our column 3. They, like ourselves, were sick too. So now we go to prayer. We ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, patience, rather than intolerance, self-pity, and impatience, that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. They're trying to give me a picture of how to act with people that upset me. Treat them as if they were a sick friend. When a person offended, there's a promise. People are going to piss you off. Yeah, we said to ourselves, that's an important one, to ourselves, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry, thy will be done. Now look at that, in that quick little prayer. This is a sick man, new approach. Okay? Out of that approach comes the question, a God aspect, how can I be helpful to this guy? And it might be just shut up and leave. And it might be something else. But the question is, how can I be helpful? And then we go to the God card, and we ask to be saved from being angry, from being afraid, because we don't want to act out of that. And then we go, thy will be done. So I want to act out of God's will, God's thinking, not my thinking. That's what the prayer says. If I'm doing that, I am not creating what's on my 4-step. I'm not recreating that life. Here's another little caveat. We avoid retaliation or argument, which takes care of 95% of your problems. Retaliation and argument. Retaliation is getting even. Argument's trying to convince you that I'm right. It's not discussion. So avoid retaliation or argument. Why? Wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We can't be helpful to all people, but at least God can show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. Kindly and tolerant, rather than selfish and intolerant. You see the difference in the principles? The difference in the values that are informing my thinking, and that thinking is going to come into my actions. Referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, putting out of our minds the first 3 columns, we resolutely look for our own mistakes. This is not fun. The question is, look at each resentment, what they did and how it affected you, and ask yourself this: where had you been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Now it's not fun. Up until this point, it wasn't too bad, because it was all about you and what you did to me. Now they're saying, so, I got this big resentment to my dad. Because he didn't love me, he wasn't supportive. And he was really an a-hole. And it just, I didn't like him. He just wasn't the dad I was supposed to have. And it affected every area of my being. All my ambitions was sapped. I'll give you a story. I was a kid, I wasn't too big on school, and I was having some problems in math, and I came home with a D. He was a civil engineer. He could do 6/8 place multiplication and division in his head. He couldn't teach it, but he could do all that stuff, algebra, trigonometry, all that stuff. So I bring home a crappy math grade. He didn't have to say anything. He just gave me the look. And I went, oh, shit, you know. And it wasn't, look at the A, look at the B, look at the C. It was, what's this? That's all he had to say. What's this? And I'll do better. And I did better. It took me all year. And I think I got up to like an A-, okay, all year, after school, the whole deal. Because why? I wanted his approval, right? I brought home the A-. Look at how far I come. He looked at me, and what did he say? He didn't say, good job, way to go, kid. He said, why didn't you do that in the first place? And I thought, screw you. I'm out. And I bailed on school from that point forward because I was dying for this guy's approval. And I busted my chops to get it, and I brought home what I thought he wanted me to do. And what did I get? I never got an attaboy. I got a, why didn't you do that in the first place? So you can see, justified resentment. I mean, I've got a life full of this stuff with this guy. You know? I came to him, I slammed my thumb with a hammer, and I'm crying. He goes, oh, why don't you bawl like a baby? And I'm holding my thumb, I go, Jesus, oh. He stomped my foot. And I'm going, oh, my toe. He said, now your thumb doesn't hurt, does it? I mean, this is my dad. Now, I'll also tell you, in his defense, he would have walked through a wall for me. He would have laid down his life for me, but I didn't know that at this time. So I got a life full of this stuff. And it's justified. God, you could spend years. It shrinks with this stuff. I got issues. I'm the discouraged child. Oh, shit. You know, you must have a pill for the discouraged child. Anyway, so the deal is, I get over to the end of the column. So, when your dad doesn't love you the way you think he should love you, how do you act? Oh, I tell him his wife's a bitch. I steal from him. I lie to him. I steal his car. And I bring the police home regularly. Oh, so that's how you're going to get someone's love. Isn't that interesting? I was saying love me while I slapped him in the face. That's on me. You see, I can't ever get my dad to change. I can't ever get him to change. But I can change that about me. I can change my reaction to him. And I'll tell you how this worked. He sobered up about 10 years before me, and we were not AA buddies. I'm here to tell you. It was gas and fire. You put us in a room together, and it was on. You didn't have to do anything. Just walk in, sit down, and what are you looking at? You know, and off to the races. And I knew I couldn't live with this, and I didn't want to. And after I got to the point where I was willing to do my amends with him rather than wait for me, I sat down with him and I started telling him all the things that I had done that was wrong. And then he started crying, and he started telling me the things that he had done that were wrong. And there was this enormous healing. It didn't change us, but it healed us. And what I learned from that was, from that point on, I would always sit with my dad, and I would always butt up against the things we didn't agree on. You know? And your politics suck. What, your religion sucks. You know, what? And I'd always be in that struggle with him, you know? And what I did was I quit doing that. I don't know where I got the idea or who gave it to me. I'm sure someone did. But instead of doing that, I started just accenting the things we had in common. And I dropped a lot. I just accepted Dad's going to be Dad, Roger's going to be Roger, but we got some common ground here. Tell me about your prayer meditation, Dad. Tell me about the 6 step. Tell me about, tell me. And tell me about how you work with guys. And, tell me, just share the stuff that we got in common. And an enormously beautiful, not only healing took place, but a relationship grew there. I ended up helping him die. I was the black sheep of the family. I was the executor of his estate. I was the plug puller. I was the executor of his living will. I was the guy. He trusted everything to me, and I set up a trust for my mother. Trusted everything to me. I was a thief. I was a son of a bitch. I was a crappy son. And ended up with a totally different relationship, because when I realized I couldn't change him, but I could change how I be with him, the relationship transforms. If you don't argue, you don't retaliate, you can't have a fight. So I, unbeknownst to me, started practicing aspects of God with my dad. We shared the aspects of God, and a whole different relationship grew out of that. He's in the hospital dying. I go up to the ICU. Man was totally at peace with himself. He's got tubes coming out everywhere. It's in the middle of the night. I had full access because I was the liaison for the family. And so I'd go out to do a talk or something, and I'd run up to see him before the talk or after the talk. And he'd be sitting up there doing crossword puzzles. He's all wired up in oxygen. And I'd look down and I'd say, Bob, is there anything you want me to say? He said, just try and be honest for Christ's sake, you know. Okay. And I come back and I say, yeah, I did the talk. He'd go, well, did you lie? You know, it was just a neat thing. And I got to walk him out. I got to walk him out. And huge gift. Huge gift. But if we're going to wait for everybody and everything to change before we're okay, we're screwed. But when I get to this fourth column, how did I show up? Selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened. I can change that. And if you source something different, you'll get different results. It's the law. It's the way it is. If instead of selfishness, I'm sourcing selflessness, instead of dishonesty, I'm sourcing honest. Instead of self-seeking, I'm trying to be helpful. Instead of fear, I'm sourcing faith. You can't not get different outcomes. The problem is we do it a little bit, it works, we go, wow, wonderful, and then we forget. And then feels like we're going backwards. But it's the learning process. Because we practice this old way of being and thinking, for some of us for many, many, many decades. But for a long time. So you get sober, you practice some new ideas for a couple months. Don't think the planets are going to shift. It takes time. It's practice. It's not flash and everything's all better and everything's good. It's practice. And you'll have great periods. You'll have periods that seem to be going backwards. But in retrospect, you'll see the whole thing was forward progress. But when I go backwards, it's because I missed a lesson. And it's showing up again. And it's showing up again. And you can ignore your lessons, but they won't go away. And what you'll find is every time you cycle around, that thing comes back with a little bigger hammer. And you're going to either get in front of it or it's going to get on top of you. So there's the prayer. God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. Nice. Whole new way to approach. So now I've sourced me. Though a situation not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. Now you're making a list again. This is not a real esteem-building exercise while you're in the middle of it. It's depressing. There could be some sleeplessness, there could be a lot of tears, a lot of sadness, a lot of guilt, shame, remorse. But until I get in front of the truth about me and how I'm showing up in my life, there's no hope. Just do the exercise. Place them before us in black and white. We admit our wrongs honestly. To who? To ourselves. And we're willing to set these matters straight. So am I willing? Have I gotten in front of my stuff? Have I been honest with me? And I'm willing to set it straight. That's all that's required. That's all that's required. Let's stop here for the day, and we'll start with Fear Wednesday. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.